Thankfully, this time we have Firebat throughout the entire series as the VODs were able to kind of recover. And a pretty decent start for Firebat. He's got some good cards going on in his opening mulligans. He's got Auctioneer. He's on the coin. He gets an extra card. And so by all means, it seems like sunny weather ahead for our Copenhagen Wolves player. Excuse me. Trying to trip over my own words here.
Not a great hand for Xixo, but, you know, still could just... has 2 Flaming Tokenos to make use of that hero power. So, still go well for him.
Alright. Firebat has stuff to do, which is often the most important thing against Shaman and a lot of other decks. That way you're not just allowing them to build the board. In fact, Firebat's going to take a more aggressive stance. Use his SI7 agent to deny the ability to kind of build any semblance of board presence for the Shaman. I like it.
Yeah, and it's gonna kill... Ooh, that's huge.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna kill this totem and every single totem thereafter because you can just keep attacking it. Whereas if he just doesn't play it, you know, Xixo would have, you know, 2 totems next turn, then 3 totems. And then those Defender Focuses and Flame Totems would start to get powerful.
An insta-call of Hex. Oh man, and Xixo recognizes that, well, there's a little bit of damage still being put my way, but at least it's not a 4 damage Cold Blood. And now like Firebat's trying to obviously make his opponent pay for hexing his minion. And as a result, neither players are getting optimal value on their cards. This is kind of amusing situations where both players are trying to make it uncomfortable and optimize value, and yet we have like this awkward situation where a 2/1 Hexed Frog is adding pressure on the Shaman. What is going on here?
Yeah, I guess he just wants to kill those totems very badly, and he knows 2/1 is enough to hit a totem every turn, and if it's the 1/1 totem, he can just kill with the dagger from the hero power. So that would explain why he doesn't particularly care that it's not +4, since, you know, he's just going to use it to attack a no 2 every turn anyway. But that backfires now when he fights with a 2/4.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't hex the already hexed frog to make it a 0/1 again. That would have been very humorous if that ever became the scenario. I mean, it makes sense, granted that Xixo didn't want to play Feral Spirits to get challenged. SI7 would have killed whatever totem he had. And with double Flametongue Totem in hand, he prioritized having the board presence. But Miracle Rogues has the cards to continue to put out these 3/3 minions, 2/4 minions, ways to harass and effectively pick apart Xixo's board every single turn. And he's going to use his second hex. I mean, this is how much he values his Flametongue Totem and Feral Spirit's value.
Yeah, definitely a very, very interesting play. And he did it very quickly, so it's probably something, you know, at least the first time, and he had already thought through. Most people would just pause and be appalled at, you know, without even consider using hacks on his opponent's 3/3 at that point. He just did it immediately. Didn't even, you know, flinch.
Okay, now what's important is Xixo also picked up Lotheb, a card that can deny the Auctioneer from going off, and that allows him a little bit of wiggle room, so that way he used both of his hexes, so he can't answer the Auctioneer directly, but now he actually has a minion to shut down a turn and potentially be able to set up a strong board. So the Lotheb to come out, start trading and being a little bit effective, and put some pressure back. This is what Xixo's been looking for, but at the same time, he wasn't happy that a 5/5 minion was able to stick.
Yeah, generally you want to wait for them to play Auctioneer, then you can play Lotheb neither their turn, but we're approaching the point where Firebat can just play Auctioneer and a lot of spells in the same turn, so you kind of have to preemptively play the Lotheb there, and especially considering, you know, your alternatives aren't great.
Okay, well, Firebat has a handful of spells in Gadget and Auctioneer. And he doesn't have Blade Flare. Like, he doesn't have cards that are super duper effective against what Shaman has yet. Eviscerate to kind of take out this totem, plus allow his Lotheb to push through, feels...
Oh, he has a deadly poison,
yeah,
so he could just have attacked it. But now he gets to attack the totem as well.
It feels bad, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, it's what he had to do. Definitely not what he wanted to do, but that was his only possible thing. Did you just jam all like here there? Attack for 6? It's not impressive, or?
I think so. I'm trying to think, because the alternative play is obviously to load up the board and play Manatide Totem and basically try to win, but like, you don't have forever against the Miracle Rogue. And the Alec here is uncontested. Unfortunately, I think he can just die easily. Oh, and Sap has been drawn too. That's pretty unfortunate for Xixo.
Yeah, no, as far as, you know, big minions to get Saps, that's one of the ones you care the least about because he does have charge, so...
He doesn't have to Sap it anymore. He can just kill it.
Yeah.
Oh, no. In fact, he's got, like, the more he draws, the worse it gets for Xixo because he's got so many answers. And this has been 5 cards already this turn, with potential for more, and that is bad news because Alec here is one of the finishers that Shaman relies on.
Yeah, at least he can Earthshock that guy, so it'll only be a 4/3, no abilities. I guess he can finish it off with the Fire Elemental now.
Yeah, put another threat. And 2 Eviscerates have been used, so you know a Spell Power Eviscerate can't effectively one-shot this Fire Elemental. Xixo is just, again, applying as much pressure as possible and trying to make Miracle's life uncomfortable. But there is Gadget number 2, and this allows Firebat to start pushing through once again. And the circus continues.
Yeah, and he knows Xixo is out of Hexes, so by sapping the Fire Elemental, he does give him the chance to, you know, basically just do the same thing again. Just hit it with a spell and then finish it off with the Fire Elemental. Ooh, he drew the Conceal, but he doesn't have mana to cast it. That's unfortunate.
Alright, well, Xixo can still remove its Gadget Sand, number 2, its Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah. Which is better than you just playing Doomhammer and taking 8 damage.
Yeah.
Ooh, Defender Fire is a Flame Totem.
Makes sense too.
Yeah, I guess he's just worried he might die next turn. You know, he doesn't know. Firebat actually doesn't have Shadow Step or Leroy. So, you know, he can do a whole total of 5 damage this turn if he casts all his spells. But Xixo might be thinking,
this is going to be painful. A Backstab and Fan of Knives is going to clear the board. Are you kidding me? That's so crazy how much this Miracle Rogue deck's been able to weather the storm and still not even use Blade Flurry. Xixo, he's just like, is this for real? Am I dreaming?
Yeah, now he's, you know, finally out of ways to clear the board. He could play the Doomhammer and attack the Azure Drake twice, but that's a lot of damage he takes.
No, that play is exclusively reserved for Reynad. He did that one time and everyone was like, whoa, that's way too much damage. And that was after like a really epic game in the Well-Played Cup.
Yeah, now Firebat, he could just... Ooh, he doesn't even have to Deadly Poison anymore. I was gonna say you could just armor Deadly Poison and Blade Fury everything away. But by drawing Azure Drake, just clears it all if it's for 1. So I guess by drawing the Van Cleef... Oh, never mind.
Whoa, get that extra damage in, why not?
I wonder if it might have been better to just play a big Van Cleef and conceal it.
Well, either way, the consequence is about the same. It's very difficult to come back from this position.
Yeah, at this point, you know, you just don't care much what you do. You know you're gonna win anyway, so you don't worry much. Yeah. Xixo also knows.
Alright. Well, Xixo's just kind of... He actually has the Resident Sleeper face right now on him. But he's just going to kind of pass this as soon as he just sees Lyria's confirmation. And Miracle is favored against Shaman because of those ability to draw and get those clears that you just witnessed. And it's just difficult to kind of climb back from that position whatsoever. Meanwhile, we'll see Xixo immediately queue up his own Miracle Rogue. I'm trying to look at differences immediately, and I see a few. Sinister Strikes instead of the Cold Blood, and it seems like he's going to only run 1 Drake, and that makes him play a little bit quicker. He can sneak into damage in other ways, and I'm kind of curious to see if Sinister Strike's going to pay off, because it allows him to push through the taunts, it allows him to get the damage and enable the combos, but a lot of the times, the complaints from Miracle Rogue players is that Sinister Strike sometimes falls victim to the same reason why you have conceal, double conceals, or double blade flurries. Like, it's just a little bit excessive spells, and you might have dead draws.
Yeah, I mean, it's only good when you're going to win the game. Otherwise, basically does nothing. And he runs 2 of them. That's pretty unusual. Also, that Firebat's gotta be feeling pretty well about that, because if your opponent can pick any deck and he chooses the exact same deck you were playing, that probably means his other deck is not as good as 50-50 against your deck. So if he can only manage to beat Xixo's Rogue in the mirror, he'll probably just win the series 3-0.
Also important to note, I think Game 2 is about to begin, so let's find out how Xixo responds immediately. Can he out-miracle the Miracle player? And when the meta game does revolve around bans, Miracle is one of the best decks still, because it keeps a lot of slow decks accountable. Now, the mirror can often come down to just the race damage, but I think it really does depend on how some of the draws pan out for both these players and how they recognize win conditions quicker and being able to turn it on. Like, for example, Van Cleef is in the hand of Firebat. That might be the only way you can close out this game. And Firebat might realistically have to all in at a certain point on this card.
Yeah. Interesting he kept Azure Drake.
I love Azure Drake in the mirror. It's so good. Because on turn 5, if you play Gadget Stand, you pretty much draw maybe 1 or 2 cards. Maybe 3 cards at most if you're really lucky and have the combination. But then Azure Drake kind of gets the job done, puts a 4/4, and draws a card anyways. Not to mention the spell power's a threat. Your opponent's gonna have to remove it. And then the following turn, you might have something like Gadget Stand anyways. It's like a really good filler on a turn where you're not often very comfortable just dropping the Gadget Stand Auctioneer.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a very good card to play in turn 5. I just wonder what it says about, how they think this matchup goes. I think it's clear from the way both players are playing that they don't think having an early advantage is that relevant. Because Xixo could have just coined an SX7 agent, for example, and he chose not to. Mm-hmm. So he thinks that coin, that playing for more of a late game, or at least medium late game, is more important than getting an early board advantage, which makes sense and would make keeping Azure Drake consistent with the whole way of thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with how in tune you are with the current metagame. By the way, big Van Cleef coming up for Firebat.
Yeah.
It does depend on things of that you're just trying to calculate what your opponent has. Is it a metagame where double Sap's relevant, where double Farseer is relevant? And then that kind of calculates with, do you want to be slightly more aggressive? Because there are players who do exactly what you said. They coin SI7 to the face, and they play aggressive and try to get into every point of damage. But then if they're running Farseers, that damage could be kind of negligible.
He drew the Sap. That's pretty huge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not only Farseer, but if your opponent just plays Deadly Poison, you basically wasted your coin.
Well, speaking of wasting cards,
yeah,
Firebat just lost his Shadow Step. But he still has a turn 5 play, and even if that was poor, he still kind of rebounds. And now Azure Drake evens up the card count, puts a 4/4 on the board, and he still has ways he can follow up with his Van Cleef.
Yeah, for sure. People often think you sap a Van Cleef is like you got rid of it, but it could just come down as a 6/6 2 turns later. It's not like it was killed.
Right.
Okay, so that's a pretty huge turn for Xixo, I think, because he got rid of his opponent's guy and put him in play. But it's just going to dive to the Deadly Poison here. But that's generally what I think you want to do.
Well, he has Conceal as a much better play on the Gadget Stand Auctioneer rather than play the removal game.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have any indication that he's going to lose his Gadget Stand. Oh, he draws Shiv so he can keep the draws going.
Yeah, he can. Luckily for Xixo, he has low tab, so he can stop that next turn. But this is probably the reason why he's just doing all of those things on his own turn. I feel like without Naxxramas, if low tab wasn't a card, he would just pass the turn here. He wouldn't use perhaps Shiv, because there's no benefit to doing it now, but he's doing it to play around low tab, so that even if Xixo has low tab, he will have gotten some value out of those cards already.
Excellent observation. I think that's exactly the case. Not to mention that your following turn most likely involves playing some of the 3 drops. So you're just kind of insistent on making sure to get the value now. And now we see that Xixo's kind of has a healthy board. He's starting to rack in some damage, by the way, too. He's got Synergy Strike and Eviscerate. If he just pairs together Leroy, we could be looking at a way for Xixo to kill on the next 2 turns.
Really just gonna gem Sinister Strike there? Use his mana a little bit more? Yeah, probably not.
I think you just count mana. If you draw Leroy next turn, can you use Eviscerate and Sinister Strike? And I think the answer is yes if you coin. That gives you the extra mana because you can also Blade Flurry as well. So he's just calculating his damage, just in case. But it seems like it won't matter because now Firebat's killed off Lotheb, so his damage has been limited, and he's been healing up a little bit as well.
There, Jake. Yeah, pretty good card here. You were right.
That is, if he gets another way to Blade Flurry and get value, that's actually insanely powerful here.
It is, yeah. Luckily he has that coin, so he could just Blade Flurry everything for 4. And that would put him in a very good position at 29 life with 2 minions in play, and his opponent, will have taken 7. That's pretty good for him.
Excellent. It's still a little empty because look at how many weak and fragile cards he'll have left. He has Eviscerate and Sinister Strike and Preparation.
Yeah, that is
true. He's going to be left at top decking Leroy, but still I think it's a good deal here.
And his opponent does have ways to clear the board. Like, he has Phantom Knives with Paunos, and if he draws Blade Flurry, he has 2 Deadly Poisons to go with that. So, we could definitely see a sort of comeback here, even if the board is cleared.
I mean, he does have an alternative of weaponing up and using the Deadly Poison and playing a little bit slower. But I'm of the where it's like you try to be aggressive in this matchup. You try to cash in value, get the spell power in while you can, and put the onus on your opponent to be able to clear here.
Yeah, interesting that he chose to use Preparation and not Coin, because that would allow him to also play Sinister Strike, which will hit for 1 more damage now than it will likely hit next turn. So pretty interesting play here. Also, the coin, well, he'll get to 8 mana anyway, and yeah, it doesn't really matter if he draws Leroy.
Okay, Firebat doesn't have Blade Flurry, but he's got ways to kind of draw and deal with the board. I
mean, he can deal with the... he doesn't really want to sap any of his opponents, guys.
Yeah. Either sap targets are suboptimal.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that Eviscerate? No, it's just sap.
Yeah, it's got to be feeling pretty good for a 6er here to get his Drake sapped. Yep. His opponent did drop a 6/6 Enclave.
I mean, it's disappointing because if the Drake didn't get sapped, that's actually lethal right there because he had a 5 damage Eviscerate.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. He would rather it lived.
Oh, he gets Conceal. Oh man, he has double Eviscerate here off the top, and Xixo is going to close it out with spells only. No Leroy necessary.
Yeah, no, Sinister Strike for you. Maybe a preview of what's going to happen next month already. When Leroy costs 1 more mana.
Could be. Firebat will have to turn to one of his other decks. Whether his Ramp Druid